Okay, so in this series, we're going to be talking about different business models for e-waste recycling. So the way I've structured the presentation is just a small introduction about myself for those who don't know me. Then just sharing some of my experiences. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of e-waste recyclers all across the globe. So I'm happy to share some of the lessons that each of them learned with the larger STEP community. And then also looking at some of the strategies that will help e-waste recycling companies to increase their scale and profitability. And then last but not least, some tools that I've come along, that I've seen over the past few years, and that I felt were quite useful to achieve bigger scale and higher profitability. So first of all, very briefly about me. So I'm an economist, not an engineer. I started working in management consultancy at the company Deloitte, where I had the opportunity to do a lot of audits, a lot of evaluations, help a lot of projects, entrepreneurs set up operations, mostly in emerging countries. And then in 2011, I became project director at World Loop and had the opportunity to support about 20 e-waste recycling companies to either start up their business or to scale up. And at World Loop, the services that we provided were basically financial support, so providing seed funding to start up pilot projects, then also working with the recycling companies in terms of how do you set up a recycling company, how do you set it up as a business. And then we also had negotiated big framework contracts for all the recycling, for recycling the fractions that cannot be recycled locally. In 2014, I became an independent consultant. One of the reasons is that I noticed that EPR is really one of the big contributors to the success of any recycling operation. And I felt I could use my experience in a very productive way, working, let's say, more on the framework conditions. Since 2015, I've mainly transformed into an entrepreneur myself. Today, I have a plastic recycling company in Cameroon with 3 factories and Gabon. And nowadays, I live in Kenya and I'm focusing more on renewable energy projects. We are developing hydropower plants. So as I said, my experience in e-waste recycling has been focused, let's say, on the period 2011 and 2015-16. But I feel that there's a few lessons that are still useful today. So I've tried to summarize the points I'm trying to make in 5 points. So first of all, recycling is a business. Secondly, it's a tough business, starting with collection, needing EPR to scale up, and above all, cash is king. So coming to the first point, there are a lot of different ways you can do recycling in general and e-waste recycling in general, and that's also the reality we see. And we see companies operating who look at it mainly from a profit point of view, from a business, running it as a business. Then there are NGOs who have been active in the business, associations, even individual initiatives. But despite all of these differences, I think one important thing to keep in mind is that the business case for e-waste recycling is positive under certain conditions. When the material is brought to the door of a recycling factory, when you make certain choices in terms of the materials you collect and the way you treat them, and when you have alternative revenue models. So what does this mean? It basically means recycling in itself is a profitable model, but collection in most cases is not, because you can collect, let's say, in highly populated areas from collection points where you get a lot, but getting to the last mile, also reaching the remote locations, and especially in developing countries where the distances are often much larger, is the main challenge. And also, as we all know, some materials have a positive value, others have a negative value, and that's where you need EPR or another financial income stream to come in. So when looking at it from the business point of view, I felt very strongly in my experience working with these 20 companies that the real model that only works is to operate it as a business, running it as a company. That means that you have real ownership, meaning that their shareholders investing money, it's their money, they want a return, they feel personally responsible, accountable for it. Also, the management is ideally involved in the company as a shareholder to create that extra accountability. Because especially donor-funded projects, I've seen that the accountability is not necessarily the same. If you get free money, if you are just hired on the payroll and you're not fully in it with all your resources and your time, and you don't commit 100%, I've seen it fail in quite a lot of cases. Running it as a company also means establishing realistic but ambitious targets and objectives, and also committing to getting those. I've seen instances, especially in the non-profit models, where they make nice plans, but in the end, only 20 or 30% of the target is met. In a business, that is impossible. If you see along the way that the target is not realistic, then you quickly adjust your strategy, your plan. You operate in an agile way, and you turn your business model upside down if you need to. But just not meeting the plan is not an option, because you will run out of cash. Recycling in general is a difficult business, where efficiency is everything. You can lose a lot of money in expensive overhead costs. You can lose a lot of money in transport costs. So you always need to have an extremely lean mindset. And on the whole, non-profit versus profit discussion, my experience is that you need to make a profit in order to invest in growth. Otherwise, the organization is becoming too dependent on subsidies. So I know that these points are probably a bit provocative for those who are looking at more donor-funded models, but it's been my experience. One example that I think most STEP members will know is the facility in Ethiopia. I've been there myself 2 times. It's a very nice project in the sense that it's a nice facility. It's been funded by the World Bank. But in terms of management, there's no ownership. A lot of the equipment that is there is not necessarily needed. Is not based on a gradual growth model, and there is no real pressure to deliver results. That being said, on the non-profit models, I have seen models working, but most of them, they struggle to break even. Getting to those minimal collection volumes, or to scale up after an initial success. That being said, I also believe that there is definitely a mixed solution necessary. One instance where I've been personally involved is the case of the World Bank project in the DRC, where the basic idea is that a donor brings in the funding for the capital, but then it's up to the private sector to operate it as a business, and it's up to professionals to operate it as a business. Also, of course, if we're talking about extended producer responsibility, that is also, as I said before, a very important element for additional financing, to finance the collection that is not per se economically viable, or to recycle the materials that have a negative value. Secondly, recycling and e-waste recycling particularly is a tough business, where the most difficult thing that I've seen is organizations acquiring a sufficiently high collection volume. So actually getting to 50 tons, then to 100 tons, and to 300, 500 tons and above is something that a lot of companies struggle with. It's also quite capital and labor intensive with low margins, a high dependency on international prices. So efficiency and being lean is really key. Then to be successful in e-waste recycling, in my experience, the collection network is really the most precious asset. It's not about the machines you have, about the size of your warehouse. It's really about how you are able to get tons through your collection network. Because of course, without those collection volumes, you cannot pay your salaries, your warehouse, your equipment. And even though you may be well funded, you will run out of cash at some point. So really, the collection is the river, let's say, that powers your business. And one thing that I've noticed in particularly is that it's very important to adapt your cost structure to your collection volume. So it may be that you make a business plan to collect 100 tons or 500 tons, and you see that, okay, you're not going to get there. That's okay. I've seen recycling companies operate at different levels and be break even or slightly profitable at different collection volumes. But then you need to adapt your costs accordingly. So that, let's say, if you collect 50 tons per year at an average value of 500 euro per ton, you make sure that your overhead costs are aligned to that. If you collect 500 tons per year, that you align your overhead costs to what you can afford based on your collection. And then any collection strategy that works really well is based on the one hand, having a stable baseline, developing customers who have recurring volumes, recurring quantities that you can count on, so that you know that you're making a jump from today, let's say from 0 ton to 100 ton, but you will not drop to 200 because you have customers with sufficient or collection network that allows you to collect enough. And at the same time, you want to be building on a growth path to increase your baseline and bring it upwards. Then extended producer responsibility. In my experience from the 20 organizations that I've worked with, it's really key in order to scale up, both for geographical reasons, because there's always a limit to the distance whereby your collection is profitable or break even. And if you need to start collecting small quantities from far distances, then at some point, if you do detailed after calculation, you will see that you're in fact losing money. For the same reason, with regards to EPR, some materials are positives, others are not. In theory, you could finance internally as a company, so your valuable materials could fund your non-valuables. But at that point, you're creating a level playing field, which is not leveled. So if you are doing this and your competition is not, then you're creating a competitive disadvantage. So that's why this is really important. In particular, when you're competing with the informal sector in a lot of emerging countries. These guys, they don't care about environmental impact assessments, about license, about quality standards, safety standards, all things that are costing money and costs that you incur, but that your competitors from the informal sector do not necessarily have to incur themselves. Which also stress the importance of the regulatory authorities and the environmental monitoring agency to be also doing controls, and you can actually also play a role there in, if you are aware of certain practices, to signal these to the environmental management authorities. So these are, let's say, a few parameters in terms of business model, in terms of framework conditions. But one thing that you do have more in your own hands is how you manage your cash. I've seen quite a lot of companies fail because they weren't able to sufficiently forecast their cash needs. And when you start to have cash problems, then it's really all downward from there. So if there are a few simple principles I'd like to share with you is that one, you can never have enough cash. Whatever amount you think you need, make sure you have enough cash at least to operate for 6 months at least, taking into consideration also your possible loss or profit. And do invest in a good financial manager or a very good financial controller to be following up on your costs on a monthly basis, because it will provide you valuable insights that will allow you to change your strategy on a monthly basis if it is needed. If you wait too long with looking at the financials, then you will turn into, you will run into problems, and at that point you will have already burned quite a lot of cash. So these are, let's say, some lessons learned from failures and from success stories. Now I want to get a little bit more concrete, trying to help all of you, those operating an e-waste recycling facility or being involved in it. What are potential strategies that can you help overcome these challenges that we've talked about in the previous section? So again, a quick summary here. First, winning strategy is developing synergies in your collection network. Second, make others collect for you. The third one, remembering that you are not an industrial company, but a service company. Fourth, cash is king. And then 5, aim big, take risk, and be innovative. So coming to the first point, developing synergies in your collection network. As I've said before, in my experience, the collection network of a company is really one of its biggest assets. So cherish it and try to leverage it, getting everything out of it that you can possibly. So some of the questions you can ask yourself is, okay, the collection network that I've built, in what other ways can I use it to collect other materials and possibly recycle, expanding the scope of your recycling activity. Then also, especially in e-waste recycling, looking at refurbishment. What's the quality of the material that you're getting in? To what degree is refurbishment possible? What are the different markets for my different quality of quality refurbished projects? And also know your customer. If you are providing one service, know which products or services the customer may need in addition, or how you can create more value than just selling raw materials. And to underline this point, I would like to quickly discuss 4 cases. So one is a model that I've seen in Kenya. I've worked with the WE Center from 2012 to 2015, and now that I live in Kenya, I was actually just in a Safaricom shop, that's the mobile operator before, and I see that they still have the collection bins that we developed in 2012. So that's actually a good example. If you develop your own collection network, if you can have others do collection for you, especially companies with an existing reverse logistic network or a network that allows them to distribute their products to the customer, using that same network to get material in is very, very interesting. And so one case of, let's say, product expansion is at some point the WE Center in Kenya, they were faced with the question, okay, what do we do with all of these batteries? So they actually started to focus really on battery collection, developing this together with a partner in Belgium and in the Netherlands. Another interesting model that I've seen is in Mauritius. I've worked quite a lot there. And actually one of the biggest or more successful e-waste recycling companies, they actually started as a company providing office furniture. So they were literally providing office desks, shelves, printer supplies, and so on. And by doing this business, they noticed more and more that this customer they were getting a lousy service in terms of cleaning. So then they developed a second activity, providing office cleaning to the same service. And because they were working with quite a lot of big customers, it allowed them actually to leverage their customer base by developing new activities. And that's actually how they started working in e-waste recycling, because in terms of office cleaning, they were emptying the bins, and they were seeing that there was quite a lot of e-waste that nobody was doing anything with. And so that's how they evolved from, let's say, an office furniture manufacturer or installer to an e-waste recycling company. And today, this is actually their main business. And the office cleaning and office furniture is still quite small compared to the e-waste recycling activity today. Then another example that I find quite interesting is city waste recycling in Ghana. So they started as an e-waste recycling company, but over time they also started recycling plastics and wood, because they saw that from their collection network, and they work a lot with informal sector collectors, they actually could leverage that same network to collect plastics and wood, and in that sense provides like a total solution to their customer, which reinforced their market position and allowed them to enable them to face less competition. Then also for the fourth point, how do you create more value from your material? I like to cite my own example of Namé Recycling. So in Cameroon, we are collecting plastic bottles, PET plastics mostly, that we were first compressing and selling, then shredding, then washing with cold wash, with hot wash. And now, since 6 months, we're actually producing a final product from it. So using the same plastic material to create a final product, which is quite interesting because it allows us, like for the high grade plastics, we export those internationally, and the low grades, if we were to export them, it would actually be loss making. And we would get maximum 250 euro per ton for those materials. But by producing a product from these plastics, being straps that you often find around pallets and carton boxes, we are all of a sudden now selling a product that is worth 2,000 euro per ton. So almost 10 times the value using the same material, of course, with an additional investment. And now, since 3 months, actually, we've seen a sharp decline in the prices of plastic on the international markets. So luckily, we have this strategy in place, and now we can just focus more effort on the product of PET straps as opposed to selling flakes of plastic. Then secondly, collection network. There's only so much that one person, that one team, that one company can do. So try to be open and leverage others in your collection strategy. Some of the questions that you can ask yourself is, who else has access to the materials I'm interested in? Is it the informal sector? Are these NGOs, associations, embassies, companies? What about companies, organizations that are working in the same industry, but on a different level in the value chain? Like, for instance, IT service companies, companies doing maintenance, repairs, installing licenses, importing the products. And also expanding a little bit more, if we're looking at facility management in general, or waste management in general, are there existing channels that I could possibly use to get more collection? And then something that I've always found very important, if we are looking at the e-waste challenge or the waste challenge in general, there is no such thing as competition, because in general there is plenty of waste for everybody to make a very decent living. And it's all about, using different models, using different strategies. So ask yourself also, are there parties that I can partner with instead of compete with? Are there things that others are doing in a different way, or that others are less interested in than I am? And can we be stronger together than we are individually? One of the lessons learned that I've also seen is be ready to pay cash. I've seen a lot of organizations struggle with the question, okay, should we be paying cash or just use awareness raising, responsible civilian efforts and so on. Of course, it's different in every country, but in most developing countries, what I've seen is that if you don't use pay for e-waste strategies, it won't be able to really scale up. So a few cases on collection models. So as I cited before, in Kenya, it helped to set up a partnership with Safaricom and with Nakumatt, which was a supermarket chain, whereby the organization, the company who was helping in this collection effort would actually get non-tangible benefits and also give non-tangible benefits. What does it mean? In this case, it actually means that, okay, by allowing these organizations or by deploying collection points through these networks, you're offering a marketing service, a visibility service to these companies. And instead of providing financial rewards to the people coming in to hand in a broken phone or a broken computer or a broken radio, by using something that the company is producing itself, like in the case of the Nakumatt supermarket chain, had like a bonus card system where you would get loyalty points. So we developed a scheme where the consumers handing in e-waste would actually get more bonus points on their card, which for the supermarket chain was at very low cost. And so let's say instead of offering $1, they could actually offer, let's say, $10 worth of bonus points. With Safaricom, the mobile phone operator, we negotiated something similar with the WeCenter with airtime. So a mobile phone calling value. Then looking at one of the more successful models in Africa, it's a company called Chilambo in Tanzania. I worked with Chilambo Recycling up until last year, and then they were doing 4,000 tons. And how did they get to that volume? Well, mainly by partnering with large telecom companies, so mobile phone operators, and also by expanding the product range. So they started, let's say, looking at computers, mobile phones, but then they weren't afraid to expand their scope to also look at mobile phone antennas, because that was one of the main products that their client wanted to have a solution for. And eventually it also transformed into recycling of diesel generators, because a lot of these antennas were powered with diesel generators. So again, it's about offering a complete service, thinking together with your clients, scaling up an initial small collaboration to a scope which is much bigger. The same thing goes for our plastic recycling, Name Recycling. We are working with Nestlé, with the Castel Group, with Coca-Cola, and these are companies. Yes, they have plastic as a packaging material, but also aluminium. And so now at the moment we are developing a model for aluminium collection and recycling, and also working together with associations. And there are many non-profit organizations that want to play a role in waste management. So use them instead of competing with them. Engage them as a collector, but leave the actual processing and commercialization, leave it to the professionals, but use other actors in your collection network and start those discussions with them to see how you can engage them, and don't be afraid to pay them. There needs to be something in it for them as well. Then third point is something that I learned in a very hard way, is don't forget you are not a processing company, an industrial company, but ultimately you are first and foremost a service company. What do I mean with that? Yes, you are in the business of recycling. You are doing collection. You are doing dismantling. You are handling raw materials. You are driving trucks and forklifts and shipping containers. But to your main customers, the ones having large volumes, the one having a really big stake in the industry in your country, you are also more than that. You are providing waste collection service, yes, but you are also providing a marketing service. And in many cases, you are also providing a compliance service. If there is legislation that forces importers, producers to take back a part of the products that they put on the market, then they need you to operate legally in that country. So really thinking about beyond the recycling, what other value, what other service do I offer to my clients? And are these customers prepared to pay for this service? So I actually, one instance I can cite is of our own company, Name Recycling. At some point, we almost lost the contract with our biggest customer because we got the feedback like, hey guys, you are doing a great service. You've collected 1,000 tons this year. That's amazing. But we don't hear or see or nobody knows you. And so we're literally given 3 months time to develop a marketing and communication strategy that would allow our customer to also benefit in terms of marketing from all of the good work that we were doing. So yes, we were saving the planet, but for the customer, for the stakeholders of the customer, it wasn't visible. Then also another model that I've seen is in Senegal, a company called Cetic, where they're actually providing collection boxes who look really nice, branded collection boxes that are placed in the offices outside of the companies, and actually sell these collection bins to the company as a marketing product. So really charging them for it, renting it on a monthly basis, if I'm not mistaken, in exchange for the visibility for the marketing service that it was providing. And then going to the fourth point, cash is king. I've already mentioned it previously in my introductory part. But what does it mean concretely? So at the level of your collection, if you have to pay for all of your e-waste and it takes you 6 to 12 months to collect enough to fill a container, to export it and to get your money, then you need a lot more cash than the 6 months that I mentioned before. So try to find other ways of collecting by not necessarily spending cash. And one model that I've seen working quite well in Cameroon and also in Gabon is actually using points. So if you are able to mobilize citizens to bring in waste and reward them by giving them points, which in turn they can convert into goodies or actual, let's say, items, products, then you are winning on two sides, because on the one hand, you don't have to spend the cash today or at the moment that you're collecting. And secondly, just as in the case with the bonus cards in the supermarket chain and with airtime at the mobile phone operator, you can leverage some of the products or services that the companies you work with can offer you at a reduced cost, allowing you to offer actually a higher financial incentive than if you were to do it cash. So then you don't have to spend the money in cash, and at the same time you can offer more in terms of value than when you would be paying cash. But also one of the things that I've seen and I've learned, at some point you need to pay cash to scale up. There's only so much that you can do with these alternative collection models. Then in your operations, I've seen a lot of organizations struggle with paying their salaries on time, especially if a container takes longer or if payment terms are not negotiated in a good way. But that's also one of these things. If you don't have the river, if you don't have the cash river of your business flowing, and you're not able to pay your salaries on time, then you are creating problems, because you'll have valuable employees that leave your company. If you don't pay your taxes in time, you are incurring fines, and then you get into this negative spiral. So try to first and foremost reduce your costs so that the cash that you have is enough to cover your fixed cost waste. And then payment terms is something that is very often forgotten, but it is perfectly normal. If you start a collaboration with a company, they will want to be paid in cash first, or with a payment term of 30 days. But as the relationship grows, evolves, and especially if the other party is bigger than you, then you are in a position to start talking about payment terms and ask them, look, if we can negotiate a payment term of 3 months for the products that or the services that I'm getting from you. And at the same time, you can do the opposite with your customers that you're providing with raw materials. In the beginning, any client of you will pay you in 90, 60, 30 days. But if you become a bigger and more important client, you can start negotiating maybe 15 or 10 days. So if you're able to play with those two parameters and at the same time pay your invoices later and get your money quicker, and then you are able to leverage your cash in a smarter way. Also with established customers, if you have a big contract for which you need to do certain investments, advance payments are also often accepted if you are in a relationship where you've proven already something. And if you can come up with a convincible business case that, okay, if you do this and this investment, you're able to collect much more and improve the service that you're providing to them, then in a lot of cases, your clients might be open to working with advance payments. And also with your shipping company, shipping industry is typically an industry where the payment terms are also highly dependable on the reputation, or let's say on the reliability of the shipping company itself. So it's also something that you can leverage. If you're working with a big party, then they will probably accept or allow you to pay a little bit later. So these are also things that you can play with. And then 5, aim big, take risk, be flexible and innovative. I think that must be the credo for any entrepreneur. But what does it mean concretely here? Wherever you are today, and despite all of the challenges and problems that you're facing today, and don't forget to take a step back sometimes and really look at, okay, am I on the right way to get where I want to be in 5 or 10 years? And how can I get there faster? And how can I get there smarter? And ask yourself questions like, okay, who holds these large quantities of e-waste? In what other way can I partner with them? What other service can I provide to them? How can I get access to bigger sources? Looking at maybe other regions, looking at other countries, looking at other products, because recycling ultimately is a business where numbers make you win or lose, and you really need those numbers in your collection to scale up. So ask yourself also in which other regions are my customers active? Can I offer other services? Is it possible for me? Can I remotely manage or ask somebody else to manage a certain collection operation for me? And last but not least, how do you turn a problem into an opportunity? How do you turn a cost center in a profit center? 2 nice examples of this last case I found is one company I met in Mauritius called BEM Recycling. So they, especially being an island in the Indian Sea, they had an even bigger challenge with their CRT glass than many of you probably have, because the costs of exporting this product to another location was just disproportionate. And so they started looking at how do we create products from it. The same logic as with the PET flakes versus the PET straps. If you can transform a raw material into a product, then at the same time you are you creating a different customer audience, and at the same time you create more value. So in the case of the CRT glass, they actually made like these coffee tables from the CRT glass with like a marking written on it. This I used to be a computer screen or something. There are also models where they're creating tiles. And from an environmental point of view, it's true these are not the optimal solutions. But if you're thinking and acting and operating as a recycling company, you need to get rid of it in a responsible way. And then, especially at your level, these are quite interesting alternatives. Another very nice example is the company where Marcus Spitzbart and Elizabeth nowadays is playing an important role. DRZ Vienna. So they actually from the e-waste they collect, they make design products. Very nice products. They have even a very nice website, so don't hesitate to check it out. It's also the same logic. How can you use a product that doesn't have a lot of value because it's waste? How can you make something out of it that is of more value to your customer, to your client? So these are some strategies. And then also in the case of Name Recycling, we were faced with is that we had a customer, the Castel Group, operating in the whole West African region, who said, you know, guys, we are happy with the work you are doing, but we actually need exactly the same solution in other countries. One was Gabon, the next one is Angola. So they actually told us, look, either you develop a way of becoming active in another country, or we have to find somebody else to do it. And we felt that that was an opportunity we couldn't just let pass. So then we developed actually a franchise model where we have a local partner operating an Name Recycling factory in Gabon under our name, but with strict governance and management controls in place to make sure that for the same customer, we are providing the same service, the same quality, the same reliability. So that's also a way to leverage your current scale and increase it. Then also very briefly, from working with these different recycling companies, I've also seen that some tools can be very useful that are often not being used. One is a tool for mass flow reconciliation. As we said before, your collection is key, but you need to know exactly what is coming in, what is in your warehouse, what is under processing, what is going out. And the problem or the challenge in recycling is the time lapse between these different steps. So you may be collecting a certain product today and only getting the money on the bank account from that same product in 12 or even 18 months. So if that is how you operate, then it's important that you're able to make accurate predictions on how much money you will be getting. And so one of the ways to do this is to work with a mass balance tool, allowing you to enter exactly all of the products that you have collected. What is the composition of it? So what can you expect in terms of tons of iron, tons of glass, tons of copper? What is the expected sales price of these different raw materials in order to be able to forecast on a monthly basis what I've collected now, when and how much will I be getting from those different materials. And this is not too difficult. I've actually developed several tools like this myself together with some people at Deloitte. And it's an extremely interesting and useful tool because it will allow you to react faster and especially, for instance, if you know that the price of gold is dropping or the price of copper is dropping, and it will allow you to see immediately what that will mean for your turnover and for your bottom line. But last but not least, also very important to just keep a good track of possible leaks in your supply chain. If you're working with partners, if you're working with a lot of employees, it's not always difficult, not always easy to know exactly what happened to what material. But if you know how much tons you have in every step of the process, then it is a very powerful tool to detect fraud. Secondly, for cash flow as well, there are many tools available there. I think even some developed by STEP. I've also developed a few over the past few years that allow you to forecast your cash flow on a monthly basis and allow you to follow it up. So plan your expenditures and your income correctly, so that if you need extra cash in 6 to 9 months, that you start working on it today and don't wait until the problem occurs to solve it. And don't forget to play with those payment terms. It creates more leverage, more potential than you think. And then, very importantly, also make detailed calculations. Actually, if you don't have a financial controller or a financial manager, then this is something you should be doing at least on a monthly basis, and actually calculate, okay, what is my actual cost of collection? What am I paying to my collectors? What is the transport cost? What's my treatment costs? Allowing you to know what you should charge to your customers if you are charging them for the collection, or also to show to the regulatory authorities who might be supportive of you. But if you are able to clearly demonstrate, look, this is the business I'm doing, and this is these are the financials, the economics behind it. I need an extra contribution in terms of extended producer responsibility. Otherwise, I will be out of business in the next year. So I would say both for yourself as for others involved, knowing or measuring is knowing, and is a very powerful tool for you to adapt quickly and change strategy if needed, but also to engage with your other stakeholders. And then last but not least, we are living in the 21st century, and especially things like collection can be done in a very 21st century way. It's one of the things that we are currently experimenting with at Name Recycling. So actually using an application that allows you to engage directly with your customers, asking or with your collectors, requesting updates on which quantities of waste they have, allowing you to have a detailed overview, and then using that as a smart way to plan your logistics efficiently, so that you know, okay, in this certain region, in this certain country, I have those and those volumes available. So if you want to be lean and efficient, then you can plan your logistics, reduce on your costs, and also forecast more accurately the quantities you're going to be able to collect and the revenue it will generate. If you want more information on this, then don't hesitate to reach out to me personally. We're actually at the moment looking to develop a collection app like this with several parties together. So that was it from my side. I hope that some of the things I talked about, some of the ideas I gave were useful to you. I don't think there is any rocket-proof solutions in it, or it's not rocket science, no bulletproof solutions. But I'm just hoping that it might give you a few ideas and start thinking on, okay, how can you apply some of these strategies for yourself in your business, in your context, because that's ultimately what is needed. You need to come up with a tailored, smart solution that allows you to be innovative and differentiate as a company, and at the same time leverage on the experience and and learnings that other people in other countries have had before.